Next up, we've got a case study now. Unfortunately, Maxime had a clash with the times that we'd sort of proposed, and so what we decided to do was, as he was really enthusiastic about presenting how much he loves Companize, we thought we'd record the session we recorded this a couple of weeks ago, and so it's a recorded case study, and just a little bit about Maxime. He's an R&D writer at Merck, where he writes all sorts of manuals related to water purification, from installation to end of life. He's been involved with over 10 new product introductions over the last 5 years. Now, Maxime believes in the combination of writing and engineering, and in peer review, and in the value of the written content as a starting material to eventually make video content. His fields of expertise include data, scientific writing, water chemistry, municipal water engineering, and spare parts creations. And so, without further ado, I'm going to launch the interview. It's a 21-minute recorded interview. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take questions and answers at the end of this. However, if you do have questions about anything that Maxime mentions during the case study, put them into the chat, mark it as a question, and I'll either do my best to answer, or at a later stage we can reply to you by email or set up a meeting and talk about what he had to say. So here we go. Hi, Maxime, and welcome to the Companize Summit.
Hi, Dipo.
Hi. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us today. Our summit theme is change management, risk management, and reporting. You, as a Companize customer, have been using Companize for quite a while, and you've got a little bit of an interesting aspect in that, your background is scientific and you've come into technical writing. So I think I won't spoil it all. I'll let you introduce yourself very quickly to everyone who's watching, and then we'll get into the discussion. So, Maxime, tell me about yourself.
So basically, my name is Maxime Sor. I've been working in technical writing industry into lab water purification technologies for 5 years now, and I come from a scientific background, as you have told the audience, and I love to write, and I love to know all about the information, and writing is key for that.
All right, thank you very much. So our discussion today, like I mentioned, is change management, risk management, and reporting. So I'd like to discuss how you use Companize in relation with this theme. So let's first question: do you use versioning?
Yes, I use versioning of topics, which are, for the ones who don't know, the elementary bricks of the document. The musician, I would say, if the chef d'orchestre is the data map, and I use versioning for the final documents.
Okay, so you've got versioning for each individual topics as compared to a larger document ensemble, which is the data map. What's the difference between those two?
So version history of the topic is handled automatically through Companize every time a writer of the team, because I'm the main user of Companize within the team, but we have up to 4 to 5 other writers in the team that do other stuff other than writing, and we can collaborate by editing individually each topic. But when we do it, we request the permission to overwrite it, and then we upload the version, which is brought to the CCMS, content management structure. And automatically, when we upload the finished writing, a new version emerges on the structure. That is automatic. And on the other side, we have version for the data map, which works same way. And as a result, we have version for the final document. But the version for the final document, at least for now, is handled manually. So we manually edit the version numbering, and every time a version is known to the outside, we have to increment the version number and to write down what are the specificities of the new version, but I will come to it in more detail later.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So how do you manage the different versions of your documentation then? So, do you use branch and merge? Do you use profiling? How do you do that?
Just edit a topic, which is named version history. We edit manually, and we write down date of publishing, version. So a little thing about the date, because we are an international company with an international audience. We use the ISO format of date, so year, then month, then day. We write the difference, the important things that the person that the reader must know about the version, but the things to know is the version history is shared internally and not externally. And what it does is, if it is an internal document for internal clients such as the field service engineer, then they can consult the version history, which is inside the document, the final document. But when we use Componize for outside audience, such as user of the water purification system, then the version history is not accessible and is private, so is only visible through the editing tool to be available for audit, for instance.
Okay. And do you use profiling, data vals and things like that do you share topics across different products?
Yeah, we do that. I used to overdo profiling, and I came back to using profiling a little less, I would say. And the golden rules I have, and it's not I who invented it. It's whenever it's more than 15% of the content which is variant, perhaps that profiling is not the best way, and perhaps that writing another topic is better. But the flexibility of the data and Componize system is that I can do formatting on the data map. I can do formatting on the topic. What I like to do ahead of writing anything is just stand back from 3 steps, look at the overall pictures, and decide what I must do, where I must go. Not straight right ahead of writing, just see the global picture. But mind that documentation is dynamic, and sometimes we do not anticipate the changes that will appear in the future, and that's part of the job, I would say.
Definitely. Do you have maybe feature branches that you use? Do you and then you have to merge back?
Yes, that's a good example. I have a document. I will not tell it for confidentiality reasons, but the profiling of this document is all about branding, but the technical content is absolutely the same. For this kind of issues, profiling is very good. It's very relevant.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Moving on. Do you have to produce reports then? And if so, how do you manage that process?
So about the
reporting?
report, I think it's more about the version history, because people can come to me and ask what is the history of all the version of the documentation, perhaps even though asking for the old version. So I save them manually on shared drives. So I would say that I do reporting. We do reporting, but for the moment we do it manually. In opposition to, as I told you earlier, about the versioning of the topic and data map, which is done automatically, and we have the ability to put comments and everything. But the amount of versioning of documentation, I would say, can go up to 15 typically for an old product. For topics and data map, it can come to 300. So it's not the same at all.
All right. And so in the case of an audit, you're able to identify, for example, you have a particular question about how a particular defect was handled. You're able to trace that through using Companize to see that this change, this defect was managed by this person, was approved by this person, and so on.
We could have the opportunity to do that if we did use always the comment section inside Companize.
Okay.
Thing is, we don't always do that because I think we stick about the version history and not about how it is installed in Companize. And we have an external tool for managing product documentation, which is more intended for Word document. And in one project, I've been asked to upload everything that I did do on Companize and to put it into a zip of PDFs that I put in this external tool, which is ISO 901. And one difficulty about working in a ground industry is the multiplicity of tools, and we have to play the role of being compliant to all the tools that are used. And I cannot force my tool to be used always because I'm not the only person to write documentation, even though I'm perhaps I would say the most technical writing oriented person within the 200 collaborators of my business unit.
All right, excellent. I'll point you to the white paper I wrote, and that word that you use, multiplicity of tools, that term that you use, that's like, one of the biggest obstacles we find, like, in trying to get reviews done, which is leading me to my next question. I mean, this summit, we're presenting the new Companize review solution. So it's basically a solution that is geared towards SME reviews, so that they're not having to handle learning a new tool, whatever tool that you're using. Usually it's been thought of for a technical writer and not for the SME. And even when you look at PDF reviews, there's so much work that is involved there, publishing it, annotating it. And if you send to 5 SMEs, then you've got 5 loads of notes to assemble into one particular document.
Yes.
But we'll be going into a demo of that in a few minutes after this interview. So how do you handle reviews of your documentations by your SMEs at the moment?
I would say that it's still work in progress, because even though I've been working for 5 years, as I told you earlier, thing is I'm still evolving constantly on my processes. And as you say, yes, reviewing is key, because even though a talented writer cannot do everything and will always commit some mistakes, and we cannot dodge it. But what we can do is involve people in reviewing. And for reviewing, yes, I did the techniques that you told, that annotating PDF individually. When you have up to, I would say, 4 reviewers, it's quite okay. When you have 9 of them, it's a hell to manage.
Yeah.
So using a collaborative tool is key. The tool I use is a tool which involve the reviewing of the PDF online and to make bubble comment, which every reviewer can do instantly at the same time, and bounce of comment the comment of everyone. So everyone sees the comment of the other. It has perhaps a little drawback of influence, cognitive bias of if someone says something, especially if the person is an influencer, a natural influencer, the other will follow. But the good thing is people can, I would say, brainstorm together. And as a writer, it's gold because everything is structured in one place. And what I liked about this tool is more oriented to the final PDF. And as a writer, I know to convert mentally the final PDF from the elementary bricks, the topics. But the other person cannot do that. That is the reason why I prefer to involve people in the review in the final PDF and use a tool that does that rather than going individually into the topics. That can be complicated for profiling reasons. And even though people are, how to put it in a diplomacy way, I would say that reviewing is an additional task that are asked for them. So they don't want obstacle, and when they are asked to click on several boxes, they give up. So it has to be as simple as possible and as colorful, as intuitive, and a pleasure to be used as possible.
Yes, and drive that engagement. Okay, and so we've coming to the end of this short interview. I wish we had more time, but just before you go, coming from a scientific research background, what is that reciprocity between technical writing and scientific writing? And using a CCMS, has that helped you?
So the first thing I want to say is for the people knowing either scientific writing or technical writing, imagine it's like driving. On the one hand, you have the driving of every day, using the driving policies, the driving regulation. On the other hand, you drive on a circuit, like a professional driver, making drift and everything. So it's two worlds. It's not the same rules, but one brings to the other. So it's quite the same, I would say, image. Now, of course, everything that I learned from my scientific background was used for technical writing, even though I have to unlearn sometimes some scientific writing approaches to be more data-oriented, so task-oriented, for instance. What technical writing brought to me was two things: going to the essential of what people want, I would say, and the second thing is version history. And for scientific writing, because I need to use a tool such as Mendeley, which is a content editing tool which manages bibliographic sources, and I have to use a tool, otherwise for the ones who do scientific writing, they know. So I use Microsoft Word because there is a compatibility between my managing bibliographic software and MS Word. And in Oxygen, there is a compatibility which is JATS protocol, which is another protocol that data, but it is not yet configured on Oxygen, so I use MS Word. Plus, it's more easy for my reviewer who needs to edit the Word file as well. So I did copy-paste the strategy of components of CCMS using
Mhm.
version history out of Microsoft Teams. So this logic of version history of every file to have a traceability and to have the ability to go back in time if I do mistake or if I erase some data that I want to bring back, then version history is key. And I did learn it through technical writing, and I try to mimic it in the scientific writing approach.
Okay, so well, maybe we as a CCMS vendor should look at, trying to provide more tools for scientific writing and not just focus on technical writing. Let's maybe get some stuff out there. And then I think actually and I'll give you you'll be able to see the demo of the Componize editor. But the idea is that, no matter what the source format, what we want to do is to provide an interface that an SME can just quickly and easily use. So maybe it's something that we could test out with you, and you could tell us how you feel, how you think that could help you in scientific writing as well as in your natural role as a
yes, because I have
writer.
I would say that I have three caps. Technical writer, SME, because I'm the SME of myself, basically, because the business unit I work into is small. And I would even more refer as an SME rather than as a writer. No, I choose both. And yes, I have a scientific background on top of that. And I think that my SME aspect of my job could bring empathy to what a SME, what a pure SME would want.
Yeah. All right. We'll look forward to working with that, with you on that. Thank you very much, Maxime, for taking the time to talk with us today. And I hope you'll be able to join us live on the day as well. Maybe it might be later. I know it conflicts with meetings that you've already got, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dipo, for receiving me today for the interview. I like to work with Componize. Is always listening to our needs, even though we are demanding clients.
It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. All right, excellent. That was a recording that I did a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago with Maxime. And if you've got any questions about what we were talking about, feel free to pop it in there. I'll see if I can answer it. But otherwise, I guess we could continue, mosey on to our next session. Give me 1 second to get that all queued up.